Good morning. Welcome back to Old Man Energy. I'm your host, Flint Anderson, and we have a guest with us today. He is Michael Kelly. I was on his podcast, had the privilege of doing that a couple of weeks ago. Not sure if that's dropped yet when you're listening to this or not, of course, but if not, go check him out. Michael, will you introduce yourself to my listeners and let us know who you are and what it is you do?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for having me here, Flint. It was a pleasure being able to talk to you on the Experts of the Roundtable, which is the podcast that I host. I also run scaleyouroffers.com, where we partner with creators, coaches, consultants, and help them scale up their business using paid ads, funnels, and mainly video sales letters, going through everything.
Okay. So, and you have a rather unique personal backstory. I think you're understating where you came from just a little bit. I know we all have struggles and things that we've overcome, and I don't know about you, but for me, it always feels weird when I have to give my own bio. It's like, what am I supposed to say? And I've got some news for you. The older you get, the more stuff you have that's in your bio. So you got to start picking and choosing what you talk about and what you don't, because it just gets ungainly after a while. So what, let's start before we get into what you do for folks both online and what you do for your business, because we absolutely want to hear that. But give us a little bit about your backstory. How did you get started doing that? How did you start your entrepreneurial journey? Because I'm assuming you didn't just wake up when you were 5 and say, I want to be a paid ads and email specialist.
Yeah, man, it's kind of a crazy story. So back in high school, I started hanging around the wrong kids. I got into drugs. At 16, I got into a fight, which landed me on 90-day probation, which they just kept extending it every 90 days until I was 18. And they couldn't keep me on juvenile probation anymore. So they finally released me. And that's when I just started going like straight downhill. At the height of my addiction, I was doing probably around $3,000 a month, just on the drugs of choice that I had at that time. And I started selling cannabis, started doing all of these things that I grew up with, because my mom's ex-husband was a drug dealer and all of his family was addicted to drugs, and they were all just in the drug scene. So that's kind of what I grew up with, as I was going through even from like 6 years old and beyond. I remember walking out and just seeing piles of stuff on the table when I was like 7 years old. And I knew what it was because the videos and the TV shows and movies and stuff that I was watching back then kind of had all of those references and all of that. But at 18, I really started going downhill. By 22, I started having these thoughts of like, I need to do something better. Like there's more for me on this earth than what I have been continuing to do. And at that time, I was in a really toxic relationship. I started focusing on my goals, where I wanted to go in life, and I got sober. I made a plan to stop selling cannabis just because that was my only source of income at the time. And I was following this guy online. He was doing a 365-day journey to 7 figures. And his main goal was to make 7 figures throughout that 365 days and then give majority of it away, just to show people that making money was easy. I think it was day like 52 where I finally reached out to him. I'm like, dude, I love what you're talking about. I love your energy. I want to do this. This is what I want to do. I was in college at the time because I dropped out. I went back when I was 22, or I went to high school went back when I was 22, and I finished in 2 years after starting from the beginning. So I was in college, and he's like, dude, I dropped out of college. I never had a degree. You don't really need a degree to be successful. So I ended up taking $3,000 and paying him for 6 months of coaching. And he brought me into ClickFunnels taught me cold emailing to land my first client, which was like the biggest thing ever. Even though he paid me $70 a month to run their Facebook ads, like getting that, having that first person pay you out of thin air was the best feeling in the world. And then kind of one thing led to another. I fell into the coaching space, and mindset coaching really kind of helped change my life. The book Mindset by Carol Dweck was like that one trajectory that just changed where I was going and how I thought and all of that. And I figured, I was like, how can I use what I love to do, which is copywriting, marketing, all of that, to help other people do what they love to do, which is making an impact through coaching, courses, and different things there. And how can we kind of align everything together just to make this ripple effect of impact throughout the entire world? And that's kind of how Scale Your Offers was born.
That's a huge backstory, and to overcome some of that stuff that you had to deal with is that in alone of it. Anybody that has overcome something like that, anybody that struggled with addiction, even just being able to live a relatively normal life, because I don't think what we would describe our lives as in this space are exactly what folks think of as normal. That's a challenge there in and of itself. But then to go on and excel and start to exist in the leadership space, those are some huge steps. And it sounds like most people don't make that many conscious decisions about their life in general. And you made several: to remove the addiction, then to remove the financial aspect of it, and to completely change the direction of where you're going. Um, Also, there may be some corollary there to dropping out of college, because I know I did. I know you did. It sounds like did you finish? You didn't say.
No, I went for a semester and I ended up dropping out. I originally was trying to do like real estate investing,
Mm-hmm.
and my grandpa had a house that he was renting out, and the guy that he was renting it to just stopped paying rent and just kind of trashed the house. So I was like, you know what, let me figure out some creative financing. And I had cash saved up. I was like, look, you let me come in, I'll remodel the house, I'll flip it for you. And man, that was the worst experience that I've ever had. It was supposed to take 3 months and like 35 grand. And all of a sudden my grandpa came in and he's like, oh yeah, I wanna be part of this. And he starts like, oh, we need to rip out all of the drywall, rewire the entire house. We'll pay an electrician to come in and do the final hookup and make sure everything is good. So I'm up in the attic in Minnesota in midsummer. It's like 95 to 98 degrees outside. I'm just sweating in all this insulation, trying to feed the wire through the ceiling so that way it would come down the wall. And what was supposed to take 3 months and 35 grand, we were like 60 grand into it. And we didn't end up finishing for like 13 months.
Oh my
So I
goodness.
had all this stuff going on. And at around 6 months, I was like, Grandpa, look, this is not what we decided to do. I put a lot of money into this. Like, we need to figure out a better option for me to either get bought out of this, or we have to hire an actual contractor to come in and do the work. So that way we're not paying this contractor hourly. Well, you sit there and just chat about nothing while he's getting paid by the hour.
people people don't realize one of my companies flips houses. They don't realize the amount of work that it actually takes just to coordinate and bring that off. So I feel for you. I mean, even though that's what
Yeah.
we've chosen to do, I feel for you, because it's a painful process. And if you have somebody that's not completely on board, that can be even more painful. So
100%.
so you left college, you got this guy um to do what, he started coaching you for 6 months.
Yep.
And then at what point did you realize that you wanted to exist in that space and start teaching people? The reason I'm asking is the space it feels saturated. Everybody calls himself a coach these days, which is crazy. And then, well, what kind of coach? Well, mindset, because it's the easiest default and it's the largest thing. But it's also some of the most critical for people that actually take that to heart and for what it matters. Because ultimately, if you're not thinking correctly, then nothing's going to happen no matter what you do.
Yeah.
So how did you make that transition from being coached to deciding, hey, I want to be one of these guys that teaches other people?
So I still struggle with this to this day. Like, we've put up some decent numbers for our clients and all of that, but I still don't feel like I'm at the point where I'm fully like the expert to teach people. So I'll put up like YouTube videos teaching stuff and stuff like that, but majority of the stuff that we do is done for you. However, we work with the specific coaches. So pretty much they're the face of it and we're behind the scenes, and we run all the marketing and all of that. And yeah, I just don't see myself as a coach. I see myself as more of a consultant or somebody that just does the work for somebody. Coaching, there's a lot of mindset issues that come in, even with running the agency. Like, a lot of the clients that we work with, we have to coach them through like mindset blocks that they're having, limiting beliefs and stuff like that around the strategies that we want to implement. And even then, I just don't find myself as the actual coach.
Even though your description included about 4 different ways that you're coaching people.
Yeah.
That's probably a good thing. The and that never really goes away. I can speak from experience because I came at the coaching business out of the consulting business, realizing that there was everybody that I consulted with on their business, and it was across the board. It didn't matter if it was professional, white collar, blue collar, whatever. Their business could be doing well, but if they didn't get the other areas of their life in order, then everything eventually fell apart anyway. Or
Yeah.
they were holding it together. They were so stressed and they were just miserable all the time that there was no quality of life there.
Yeah.
So inevitably, as a
100%.
consultant, I ended up working with the leadership and the owners in just mindset coaching. Okay, what's the problem of doing all this, or what's the point of doing all this if you don't have any way to enjoy it, or you're miserable all the time, or you're getting a divorce and your kids never see you, or whatever. And while there's times that that's important to, because you got to focus on the business at certain times, it shouldn't be the norm forever. That's not any
Yeah.
kind of quality of life. So we arrived at different destinations through similar paths. I think that's kind of cool, and I appreciate your humility too, because you've obviously had some success in doing what you're doing, but it always comes down to teaching people in one way or another, trying to get
Yeah.
them to understand. So what's your biggest challenge given the marketing that you guys do? Because I can see where some people are like, well, I don't want to pay for marketing. Those guys are, and unfortunately, a lot of people, because they're ignorant to that topic, they get taken advantage of rather easily.
Yeah.
So what's your biggest challenge when you see that? Is it in getting somebody to understand or believe in what you do? What sets you aside?
Yeah, man. So like the biggest challenge is we work with such a higher level person. So like our minimum client is making at least $50,000 a month. And the reason we do that is because between 0 and like $25,000 a month, they're still verifying and validating their offer. And then from 25 to 50,000, they're putting in the systems that they need to actually like scale. They might be adding a couple of team members and just being able to get the support that they need. And then from 50 and beyond, like, you can do it organically by creating content, sending DMs, hiring setters to send DMs and everything for you. But when it really comes down to the predictability of, okay, I can put $1 in and I know I'm going to get $3 back or $5 back, that's where paid ads come in. And that's essentially where we come in. So a lot of the times it's selling them or creating the belief around that, one, paid marketing is predictable. Two, everybody needs a sales funnel, and the sales funnel that we focus on primarily is either low ticket course that's anywhere from 17 to 97 that moves them into a high ticket offer on the back end, or it's just straight to a VSL. The VSL sells them on the belief around what the product does. It sells them on the belief around why they need it now, and it sells them on the belief around the client being able to actually get them from where they are to where they want to go. And a lot of the times when it comes to working with these people, like they're good with text and they're good with getting their pictures taken and stuff like that, but when it comes to delivering on camera and on video, a lot of them have some fear around that. And then on the other side of the spectrum, they might be really good at delivering on video. However, they want to do nothing, and they just want somebody to come in, kind of plug their system in, them not have to touch anything, maybe take a couple sales calls, but they really just want the entire system automated, which then all of a sudden they're like, okay, I can do paid ads. I don't have to do content anymore. I don't have to do email marketing and like all of these different things. But when it really comes down to it, you need to build that ecosystem. So that way it's content that is really affecting the ads, which is affecting the emails. So we're just constantly staying in front of them and creating this ecosystem of building that trust and the likability. Because within the last 2 years, the market has shifted completely. And now it's a trust economy. If they don't have trust in you, then they're not going to buy your stuff.
That was a huge answer, and that was a ton of information. We appreciate that. And you're right that the market shifting is something I think a lot of people. I've got a lot of questions from what you just explained, so forgive me. I may be all over the place a little bit here, but the market shifting is something that we feel is recent, but some of us have seen it coming for a while. I know I've in talks that I've been giving for almost 6 months now, and it's probably closer to a year. I've been talking about the personal touch is going to be the game changer in the next 5 years. And I don't think it's going to be 5 years. I think it's going to be this year and moving forward, because we are becoming so automated, and all of the just mundane tasks that used to give us that organic touch on our clients, they're just not there anymore. So unless you are operating from a position of integrity and it's consistent, then you're not going to win. Those guys that are going to win are the ones that have mastered that and able to bridge that gap, which means content, which means a consistent brand, and all of the things that you teach, I'm sure. So the folks that are working up towards being able to qualify for your services, when I'm talking to prospective clients, and we have a similar threshold too. I don't work with anybody that's not already billing at least $250,000 a year, which is a little less than yours, but I do a little different, because I believe you have to know how to. It's the same as if you know how to solve a Rubik's cube. There's algorithms to solve the bottom of the cube, but you got to figure out how to solve the top on your own. What advice would you give to somebody that's working their way up and creating the content, has a good, valuable offer, but just hasn't quite reached that? If you could go back and do that again yourself, what would you do?
Yeah, I would have posted less content, but made sure the content that I'm posting is just way higher quality. You don't have to be the next Hermosi, and you don't have to be posting 500 pieces of content a day in order to succeed. Like that's great for building an audience, but your main focus should be building trust with the right audience, not going extremely viral unless you have an offer that you can sell to pretty much anybody, which majority of people don't. The reason Hormozy can do it is because he's got his hands in multiple different industries, and his goal is to bring in all these industries as part of his like business portfolios and help scale up there. So I would say focus on less content, focus on the customer journey and how you can add that personalization, those human touches throughout the customer journey. Because a lot of people, they are automating it. They're adding AI chat bots and all of this stuff. And yeah, AI bots can sound pretty human, but they're still missing a lot of that empathy and a lot of the emotions that kind of come along with it. And with how a lot of it sounds, a lot of people can tell that it is AI that's talking to them. So focus on the customer journey, focus on creating better content. Don't really have to be more content, but it does have to be better quality. And then focus on your products. If you just become obsessed with your product and obsessed with the people that buy it, like there's no reason why you wouldn't become successful, because really all it is, it's understanding who you're selling to, what are their biggest problems, and how your product can bridge the gap between where they are, where they want to go. And yeah, that's pretty much like the three main things that I would focus on.
That advice is gold. So, from somebody, from my perspective, one of the things that I struggled with for a long time was brand identity, and I had advice from many different people. So I'm gonna encourage everybody to take advice that is in line with what you're doing. Um, because I was creating content in several different areas. I would have fitness content, I would have personal content, I would have business content, and it would be in different places on different platforms and what have you. And for those of you that are out there making content, you can use all of those things to bring together and still build your brand with them as long as they're consistent. Because I
Oh,
stopped for
100%.
a long time making different kinds of content because I was like, well, I'm a business guy, so I'm going to go make business content. And what happens is, and I'm getting to the point because this was a very difficult lesson for me to learn. I started to feel unauthentic because the intention you make your content with, people can tell, even if you're not saying that. So I felt restricted because I was just making business content and it wasn't going anywhere. It was doing worse than it was when I was going all the way across the board, until it dawned on me one day as I was listening to a business coach telling me I just needed to make business content, and my brand was actually a lifestyle brand. And all of those pieces had their own spot. So as soon as I went back to making content in each piece, well, that was my consistency, and that's where my believability came from. So my question to you is if you're going to encourage people to focus content and fall in love with your folks, what would you tell them about keeping their content as authentic as possible? What
Yeah.
suggestions would you have for them in that area?
Yeah, so I always tell people I follow this content tree. I made this back in like 2019 when I kind of first got into this, but it's figuring out the 3 to 4 key pillars that you want to talk about. It could be, as an example, like faith, family, fitness, finances, where finances would be like business, faith would be whatever your spiritual belief is, and being able to kind of like tie everything together. The best thing about it is each category has its own subcategories, and then each of the subcategories can even go one layer deeper as well. So, based on those, like that tree that you make, you can create content that is in alignment with each of those, because that's who you are and that's what you value, and that's what people are going to connect with you over. They're going to connect with you over your values, your beliefs, all of that. And beyond that, you're going to repel people that don't connect with your beliefs and your values, which are probably would be crappy clients to work with anyways, from everything that we've found.
And that's great. Just to reiterate that, because this hits so hard. Um, on at Old Man Energy, it's life, body, business, and mind. The four
Love that.
pillars. And I create content. Once I realized that that was my brand, and that was what gave me power, so to speak, is it became much easier to be more authentic, because you know what, you're going to get pictures of me and you get some videos at the gym because you're going to see I'm working out, and then you're going to see me playing with my grandkids or being silly on TikTok with my wife. You're going to see me speaking in front of crowds because I teach and I speak and I love for that. So you're going to see each piece of that. um,
Yeah.
I did a short on my story this morning. It was hilarious. I have, and once you start putting your head out there, your content, one of the ways that we gauge whether your content's really catching or not, and you can tell me if I'm wrong on this, is the more trolls and the more hate you start to get, the more people are paying attention to you.
Yep.
So I had one guy comment on one of my pieces and he goes, "Did that guy just quote John Wick?" you need to try harder or something like that. I don't remember the whole thing. And I made a video about that this morning. I'm like, look, one, my content's catching, but two, I literally in a lot of my content call myself a pop culture philosopher. So if you're going to bust on me for doing what I do and tell people that's what I do, you are not the target audience for who I want to be
Yeah.
talking to. There's no way you're going to get qualified for anything on that. So what advice would you have for the amount of hate that people get online, the amount of just angry or mean or negative comments that they're going to get as they start down this journey?
So, one, just try not to read the comments, because like there's going to be good ones and bad ones. If you can get like a VA that can kind of sift through those for you and just send you the good ones so you can go reply or send them the reply, like that's a huge plus. Um, but then you can do where like on TikTok you can actually create content based on somebody's comment. So like you can have infinite amount of pieces of content that you can create that's like sharing your beliefs and your values in different ways, because each person has a different way that they're kind of hating on you. So you just kind of go in and clarify why you believe that, and that's a whole nother piece of content that you can create. So there's ways to kind of leverage the hate, and then there's ways to kind of just keep it out of your mind, because a lot of the times as a new entrepreneur, if somebody tells you, hey, you suck, you shouldn't be running a business, a lot of people haven't had that ego death yet, and they're going to take that to heart, and then they're going to be like, man, I should probably quit my business, especially when things get hard, because they do get hard.
And not to quote Hormozy again over and over, but he addresses this really, really well. He says, ultimately these people they're not going to show up at your funeral, and whether you succeed or fail, they don't care. They're there
Yep.
just to cause chaos. And it's true. I mean, was it Goggins talks about, he takes all the bad comments and reads them aloud into a voice recorder and then listens to them while he's running. So that's a bit extreme of a way to deal with that.
Yeah, that's wild.
But he talks about that. He says that's his fuel to keep running when he doesn't want to go run. I'm like, okay, that's pretty hardcore there. But also, Huberman says Goggins is wired differently than just about anybody else on the
Yep.
planet too.
I just watched
I
a
don't know.
video with Huberman talking about Goggins, and yeah, he pretty much said like Goggins is a completely different animal than he's ever even came in contact with.
Yeah. He said most humans cannot do what Goggins has done. He skipped over several neurological pathways just to make stuff happen. And that's the thing. What we're really talking about here is carving your own path. You guys step in when somebody's figured out what their path is and what their niche is and proven that it works, which is realistically what that dollar figure, that cost of entry is okay, you know that your system helps, but unless somebody's figured out all that stuff, it's not going to help them as effectively as you need it to, or as they needed to, I guess, to be more specific. So in your journey, in your entrepreneurial journey in figuring this out, what were some of the biggest things that you had to overcome on the way to where you are now? What were some of your biggest challenges until you had those aha moments and got them solved?
Yeah, a lot of it was at the beginning of my career, I was just saying yes to everything that would throw money my way. And I found out that that creates a lot of burnout, because you're going to be bringing on clients that don't have the same values, they don't have the same work ethic. They want you to kind of like come in and save your business, so they're giving you their last like $10,000 to their name, and then they put all this pressure on you, and then next thing you know, it doesn't, the KPIs don't come out the way that you wanted to within the first 30 days of running the campaign, and then the client just throws everything away. And like, man, I've had clients where we were getting really good book calls, they just didn't close any of the calls that they got. And because we didn't break even in the first 30 days, which was just a light KPI that we set, because that's the main goal, is just to get us break even in the first 30 days. So that way we can figure out, okay, what works, what doesn't, and how can we scale this up. And we've had clients that didn't hit within those first 30 days. And they were like, this doesn't work. We're completely done. And then they would just like leave the Slack channel and never talk to us again. Like crazy stuff. And a lot of the times that comes down to because they're still validating their offer, they're still validating the sales process, they're still trying to figure all of these things out. So they kind of had us come in. This was like 3 or 4 years ago. They would have us come in and we would just try to fix it. And because like that's what we were so used to, we weren't used to landing these clients that were making $1 million a year, that had everything figured out. So when we would come in, we would just be under this impression and kind of created these neural pathways for ourselves that, okay, we got to come in and we got to fix something. We don't come in and we make it better and make it do better. We completely have to fix it. And that the amount of energy, the amount of team resources that we would pay our team just to get stuff done, like it was way more than we should have been doing because we were working with the wrong people.
I think that's key in any industry at any level. Make sure you're working with the right people.
Yep.
And that includes both sides from where you're at. Make sure you're working with the right clients, but make sure you're working with the right implementers too, whether that's
Yep.
subcontractors or employees or what have you. Because if you don't have the right people in place, you're not going anywhere. You'll never be any bigger than you are just being a solopreneur, which I don't really like that term, but it's very accurate in this particular instance.
Oh man, that's something that I had to deal with. I had this vision. I was like, I want to be this big agency. I want a huge team. So at the highest, I think I had like 12 employees on. A lot of them were contractors and stuff like that. And at the time, I still like had my ego just super high. So I was like, I'm just going to hire people that I can train in so that way they understand my process. They didn't have to be experts. They didn't have to know what they were doing. And dude, we burnt through so much. Again, it just comes back to just burning through the resources. We burnt through so many resources. We would have employees be on for way too long because we didn't want to fire them because they were at least getting something done. When I first started, I was by myself and then I partnered with somebody. We ran it for like 2.5, 3 years together. And then they exited out and I took everything over. And last year, I was like, we were going through the year. I was paying probably $15,000 to $20,000 a month in salaries, not including my own, and we were only doing like 35 grand a month, maybe 40 grand a month. So
that's painful.
At the end of the year, I was like, okay, I should have way more cash left over, but I hired way too fast. I hired way too many people and I hired the wrong positions. So what I did kind of coming into Q4 of last year is I let go of 80% of my team. I repositioned our offer, how we work with clients, all of that. And now it's just me and 2 other people on my team, and we can do the same amount of work as when we had 11 people with less headache because I'm not managing, I'm not babysitting in this case of how it was. And
that does happen. And Jordan Peterson talks about that where he says 20% of the people do 80% of the work.
Yep.
And identifying them is a challenge. I know what Gary Vee says, hire fast and fire faster. Which is, it's funny. Gary Vee he's very smart. He obviously has an incredibly successful, not only online presence, but just his media company is incredibly successful too. And he literally did the opposite of what you and I just talked about. His advice is make as much content as possible all day long, put it out there and see what sticks. And then proceeded to do exactly that. Yep. So he built his entire agency based on just, he was his own market testing, just trying to figure stuff out. Hormozi talks about that too. He does it on Twitter. He tweets all day long, every idea he has, and whatever sticks, that becomes his content. So for those of you out there that are listening, if you have some specific ideas about how you want to go about creating stuff, don't let messages like we're giving you stop you from doing what you think might work, because it might work for you. And there's always somebody else out there who's been able to do that. But don't keep doing something that's not working just because you spent a long time doing it. Or because you think it's a good idea doesn't mean everybody's going to think it's a good idea, but that's not ever a reason not to try.
It's funny that you say that, because every like great idea I thought I had, I would bring to the market, and the market didn't really like it. But the dumb ideas that I thought were like, nobody's gonna want this, I would bring it to the market, and people just loved it. And I'm like, what is going on here? So yeah, I
it's it,
completely agree.
it's true. I mean, you just throw it out there, see if it works, if it's silly, if so what if it's stupid. The average life of a social media post about 4 days, so it'll go away. Even if it's a
Yeah,
bad
you can always
idea,
go archive it.
yeah,
You can
it'll
archive it,
disappear.
delete it, all of that.
And you can always take it down. I mean, once it's there forever. But I even got to the point where if I've had some stupid stuff out there, I don't even take it down anymore. I just leave it there because it goes away eventually anyway. And if it does come back up, well, it gives me an opportunity to talk about what not to do.
Yeah.
It's like, well, that really didn't work very well at all. So one one thing that I've found is information is important, but action is more important.
Yep.
On your journey, where did aside from your original mentor that you talked about, or your original coach, where did you learn to keep going? Do you have a regimen where you're reading? Do you still have a current coach that's working with you moving forward? How do you get your new information, and how much time do you spend doing that as opposed to implementing new ideas and moving forward?
Yeah. So within the last year, I stopped consuming a lot of at least marketing information. Um, I stopped consuming a lot of different courses and stuff like that. I do still have like a mastermind that I'm in with. It's actually the same coach that I hired at the beginning of my journey. He launched a new mastermind like a year and a half ago, and I joined that back in July of last year, June of last year, and that's usually where I get majority of the up-to-date information. Otherwise, there's a good Facebook group called Nothing Held Back with Alan Saltinick. That's a really good place to be able to get what's currently going on in the market when it comes to marketing and sales and stuff like that. But so the first year and a half of my journey, I spent probably $40,000 to $50,000 out of pocket just doing education. And then I realized I'm not even implementing a lot of the stuff that I'm learning. And I think as new entrepreneurs, we're like, okay, if we sit here and watch this course, we're taking action. When in reality, you're not taking action, you're just consuming something. So you get on this loop of watch a course, you're getting further ahead. Watch another course, you're getting even further ahead. But in reality, you're stagnant because you're not actually taking steps to move forward. So for the first like year and a half, 2 years, that was my cycle where I would just join a coaching program or get a course. I would go through it, get another one, go through it. And I had this thought at the back of my head, and I need to know all of this stuff in order to get my clients results, or in order for somebody to want to pay me, which that came back to how I saw myself. Because growing up, being a drug addict, being on probation for as long as I had, and just being in the system, I had this belief and this identity around me that that's who I was. And it wasn't until I started to really kind of shift that part of me and shift that belief into creating a new identity around who the heck is Michael Kelly. And that is when I stopped being addicted to just this consumption of information. And I started to really take the action and do what I needed to do, and stuff like that.
That's a great testament to what a lot of entrepreneurs go through. Is we spend a lot of time doing things that make us feel good, but it's just stuff. It's not really
It's the
anything that's
dopamine.
productive. Pardon?
Yep. It's dopamine.
Yeah, it's that
Like,
you get that micro dopamine hit. It's like where they talk about don't when you set your goals, don't share them with everybody because you get some of that dopamine hit on the front side, and then you end up not executing on them. That's the main problem with New Year's resolution. If you set goals at the
yep.
beginning of the year, that in and of itself is not a problem. It's the fact that you are getting the dopamine hit for doing it along with everybody else that is the problem.
Yep.
I've always believed and always taught that reading is our superpower. I pulled myself out of poverty because of the books I read because I didn't have access to anybody or anything. And then I spent years at the same level because I kept doing the same things that got me to that level without realizing I wasn't implementing on the secondary level. And it did dawn on me at some point where I could probably write, which I did in fact. Some of these books I was reading, I'm like, I know what's coming next. I know what they're about to tell us. I know what he's about to say. And then the events that we went to became more about the association. I was able to start using those for leverage. You said something very interesting, though, talking about having to recreate yourself. And I had to do the same thing. I had to stop seeing myself as the poor guy that had overcome everything to, oh, look at me at a young age, because I'm not young anymore, obviously, but I did a lot of that when I was younger, to, okay, I'm the person who is able to teach this now. I'm the person who's lived this life. I'm the person who should be in the consulting seat and not always just chasing those stars, so to speak. I know
Yep.
how I did that. I've shared that several ways. I'm curious, how did you rewrite that mental script?
Yeah. So there's a really good book called Psycho Cybernetics,
Love that book.
and Maxwell Maltz kind of goes into what he calls like the morning formula, and I think that's what he calls it, is
Hmm.
the morning formula, where essentially you create this vision of who you are in 10 years. And I pretty much wrote out that vision and I read it every single morning, and then I would meditate for 30 minutes right after. And I did that until I started believing who I was. And then I took on a piece of paper, I wrote down I drew a line right down the middle. On the left side, I wrote all of my limiting beliefs. I still do this, where if any come up, I write down the limiting belief. And then on the right side, I write down the complete opposite of that. So, like, nobody's going to pay me $25,000 to build out a sales funnel for them, would be the limiting belief. On the right side is essentially there's people charging $50 to $100,000 for a sales funnel that are no smarter than you. They've just met the right client at the right time, and that's exactly what you're going to do. And it's really just, again, just figuring out like what are those limiting beliefs and how can you change them into something more positive, and then how can you install those into your mind. And it's just repetition and just continuing to do these repetitions. That's why they say write down your goals daily, write down what you're grateful for daily, write down um, like just the key indicators of whether you're getting to where you want to go, and write down affirmations. And as long as you keep doing these daily, after like 60, 70 days, you're going to rewire those neural pathways inside of your mind. And the way that you show up, the way that you think about yourself, and just the way that you hold yourself is going to be completely different.
There's a lot behind what you just said and a lot more, but I love that basic, concise, and clean thing. And folks, this works. And for those of you that didn't grow up in a household that taught self belief and goal setting and anything else, because a lot of us didn't. I mean, Michael, I know you didn't, based on what you said. I didn't. Um, it seems far fetched. It seems out there. It seems just made up, but it's actually what works. I remember telling some of my younger mentors, I'm like, yeah, I get that, but just skip over the dreams and goals part and just, I want the good stuff. Tell me what I need to do tomorrow, because the way we solved problems growing up was we threw work at them. That
Yeah.
was what we did. We worked harder, we worked more, not realizing, oh my goodness, I need to rewire who I am so that I can use these skills to move forward. So that's been incredibly powerful. And we are almost out of time for today. So I'm going to ask you one last question and I'm
Okay.
going to ask you this question, and I'm going to ask you to tell everybody how they can follow up with you. Of course, we'll put your links down in the description. But if you were going to leave everyone with the piece of advice that you wished you'd had when you got started on this journey, what would you tell them?
You're going to be dead one day, in 30 years after you pass away. 99.9% of people on this earth aren't even going to know who you are. So just do what you need to do today in order to create who you want to become and who you need to become.
Incredibly good advice. Michael, how can my listeners stay in touch with you, brother?
Yeah, you can find me on Facebook. That's where I'm mainly active. Facebook.com/Real Michael Kelly. YouTube, I post a video every week there, post podcasts there as well. And then if you are looking for marketing or just want to chat about marketing, you can go to scaleyouroffers.com.
Awesome, awesome. And as always, we'll put these links down there. And if you're not already following me, you know I post everywhere almost every day. So you want to find me, you can see the links below. Just look for Old Man Energy or Google me. Make sure that you're liked and subscribed to the podcast on YouTube, because you don't want to miss it. Every Thursday at 5 a.m. Eastern, you get a new episode and some new wisdom. And sometimes they're even as good as this one, although I'm not sure when this one's going to drop, but I'm looking forward to it. I want to see the feedback. Michael, thank you so much for taking this time to spend with us. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of the week, brother. Take care.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me on here. I can
Thanks.
talk.
Love y'all. Peace.